Can you believe this massive unit here actually comes shipped to you via FedEx inside this box? I'm going to show you how to make this out of the contents inside this box, how to put it together, and how to adjust it. That's what's coming up in this video. Stay tuned for that. When you first get your Japanese Paperpot Transplanter, it's going to arrive to you via FedEx in a box that looks just like this. When you set this box down, you cut it open and you open it up, you're going to find a whole bunch of parts wrapped in bubble wrap. First step, de-bubble wrap all the parts. When you do that, this is what you're left with. When you start taking the parts out of the box, one thing I would advise is setting them on a nice smooth surface. I'm just using a moving blanket, carpet, hardwood flooring, anything like that would be good, but there's no sense in putting these beautiful parts on a hard concrete or asphalt surface. So don't do that. When you're digging through the box, one thing you might notice is there's no bags of bolts or there's no loose bolts in the package. Here's why. All the bolts come pre-assembled in the holes where they should be, with nuts and lock washers attached. So you don't have to hunt for them or figure out what bolt goes where. They're already in position for you. All you have to do is just put the parts together and take the nuts and washers off the bolts and reassemble. The bolts are in place. What you will find inside the box are two smaller boxes. And inside those boxes, there's a few things. One pair of matching 10mm and 13mm open-ended box wrenches, just the cheap kind like you get at IKEA. I would take those and just toss them because we're going to want to use a socket wrench instead. You're also going to find the adjustable sweeps in the package. These are what close the furrow after the furrower cutter cuts it. So you're going to take those out, and then at that point, this box is empty, it's gone. In the other small box, what you're going to find are the wheels. These are the rear wheels which help close up the furrower. These are heavy. These are a lot heavier than I thought they would be when I first opened the box. They're solid plastic, and that's what helps push that furrower close in addition to the sweeps themselves. So you take those out and lay those out, then we'll unwrap the sweeps themselves. One other item you'll find inside the box is the instructions for the HP16, but they're all in Japanese, so unless you can read Japanese, they're pretty much useless. Although one thing on here that is pretty crucial and nice to have is a part identifier. So if something should ever break on the transplanter itself, you can simply reference the part number and we can get a replacement part out to you. When you go to set up the tool, what do you need to bring to the table? What tools do you need to supply? Pretty simple here. A socket wrench with two sockets, 13mm and 10mm, and then two box wrenches, 10mm and 13mm. If you don't have box wrenches, if you don't have a socket set handy, I find that hard to believe, but if you don't, you can use a crescent wrench, vice grips, whatever you have, or you can use the two wrenches supplied with the unit itself, which are 13mm and 10mm on opposite ends. There's two of them that are matching, so you can do two at the same time. Why I want to use a socket over these is the socket's just obviously going to be faster than having to turn one of these several rotations just to get the bolts tight. Now that we know what tools we need, let's start assembling this bad boy. The first step we're going to start with in terms of assembly is to put on the carrying handle. And this is pretty straightforward. What you're going to do is take the main unit itself, the part that has the furrow cutter on it, and you're going to take the arm and attach it to the second set of bolts down. Looking at this unit more closely, these two bolts are what you're going to use to attach the carry handle. The lower bolts here, these are 10mm, so just use your 10mm tools to take these apart. They're snug at first, so you may need to use the tools just to break it open loose enough, and then once that's done, you can just go ahead and use your fingers to fully take them off. When you do take this apart, pretty simple construction, just a long bolt, a lock washer, and a nut. The lock washer goes on the nut end. There is no washer on the other end. It'll go back into the unit just like that. When you go to attach the handle, here's how you're going to do it. You're going to bring it in from the left side if you're looking at the bottom of the unit, and the little bottom of the handle is going to attach to that square tubing on the bottom of the unit itself. Now that we have the handle attached to the main part of the unit, we're going to take the pan and we're going to attach it to that other set of bolts that was just above the set of bolts that we used to attach the handle itself. No bolts in this, bolts in this. Let's put them together. These are the sets of bolts we're going to be working with. We just installed these, so we're going to simply remove these bolts so we can put on that upper pan. Just as with the lower bolts below, you may need to use a wrench to loosen these up because they do come pretty snug. Once the bolts themselves are removed, the next step is to attach the pan. The easiest way to do that is flip this unit over. Now that the handle's attached, it stays in position nicely. So you're just going to take your upper pan. This is what will hold the paper pots when it's eventually assembled, and you're just going to flip it over, lining it up with the two holes in the square tubing on the bottom frame. Now that the upper pan is on, the next step is to put the front wheels on. They're going to simply go on just like this. This is the bottom of the unit, so wheels are going to go on the bottom. The next step, like always, remove the bolts that are already on there. Bolts again have same nut configuration as they did previously, one lock washer only, lock washer on the nut side. When you go to put the wheels on, it's pretty straightforward. You just want to take the wheels, line up the holes there on the holes of the square tubing attached to the pan, and you're just going to feed the bolts through. When you go to tighten these up, these are going to be 13 millimeter. Once the front wheels are on, it's now starting to look like something. The next step is to put on the extension handle, the one you're going to use when you pull this through your field, saving you lots of time and saving a lot of wear and tear on your back. When you go to attach the handle and adjust the handle height, it's pretty simple and easy to do. It's just a straight pin with a cotter pin holding it in place, and there's a split ring attached to the cotter pin itself to make it easy to pull out. Pull out the cotter pin, pull out the pin, handle goes in. Once your straight pin is in, next step is pretty simple, cotter pin is in. Now if we want to adjust or lower the handle height, we'll simply pull the pin, pull out the pin, and we can move the handle in or out as far as we desire. While we're at the front of the unit, we'll talk about this adjustment here. What this adjustment does is it allows you to raise and lower the front of the unit, which controls the depth of the furrow. If we just undo this nut, we can raise or lower the front wheels as much as we desire. If we raise them all the way up, this means the plow in the furrow or in the back is cutting a shallower channel, and if we lower this down like this, it's cutting a deeper channel, forcing the back of the unit lower. At this stage of the build, you may be seeing this piece here and thinking, what do I do with this? I don't see where it goes, and it really goes in one specific spot. There's no bolts for it, it doesn't bolt on, it's an attachment that goes on just like this. I'll show you how that works right here. If you imagine this upper pan was full of paper chain pots with seedlings in them, what you would do is lift the seedlings up with your hand, slide this under, and you could set that there, and this little ramp would help bridge the gap for the chain pot as it continued down the unit. Some people will use this, some people won't. At this stage of assembly, we're just going to set this part aside because you really only need this part when you're operating the unit. It doesn't get bolted on as you saw. We don't need it right now. We'll keep it, but set it aside. For the next step of the build, we're going to install the rear sweeps in the rear wheels. When you install these, what you're going to want to make sure you do is install them just like this. So the edges slope outward on both sides, because as this is pulling forward, you want the soil to get pushed in. If you were to reverse these, you'd be pushing soil outward. The wheels themselves, they're only going to fit one way, but the way you're going to want to assemble them is just like this. Not like this so they flop down, like this so they hold themselves. In the order that you're going to put these on are sweeps and then wheels. To remove these nuts in the back or to start to loosen them up, we're going back to 10 millimeter. One thing to note when you remove the hardware from the rear of the unit is all three sets are not identical. Two sets have a lock washer only. One set has a flat washer and a lock washer. This hole right here and this one are the ones that have the flat washer. The flat washer's on the bottom, the lock washer's on the top, because the flat washers help holding this piece and this piece together. When you go to install these rear sweeps, one thing you'll notice is these holes are not just holes, they're oblong, they're oval shaped. And what that allows you to do is have some play so you can adjust the sweeps based upon your soil conditions, soil moisture, to help close the furrow at a different rate. Curtis will explain adjustments of these more in different videos, but that's why they're there, is to allow you to have some play in this unit itself to adjust how tightly or how not tightly the furrow is being closed. When we go to install the sweeps, one thing we want to make sure of again is the sweeps sweep outward, meaning this way and this way downslope. They're going to go on just like that, and the sweep goes on first. The wheel itself goes on second. One thing you do want to be aware of when you're installing these rear wheels is at this stage, this unit is going to want to tip. So just put your leg or something in front of the unit so it doesn't fall on the ground when you're putting it together. Now that all 6 bolts are in, they're not tightened, they're loose, but what I want to show you is how you can, this play in the unit itself allows you to adjust how closely the furrow is pulling up the soil. So you could have it as narrow as you need to, or widen it up as far as you need to based on your conditions. To assemble this, I'm just going to put it at some generic location in the middle, and then it can be adjusted. Here it is, a finished unit looking all sweet, ready to save you lots of hours of labor in the field and save a lot of wear and tear on your back not having to bend over. If you want to move the unit from plot to plot, what you're going to want to do is make sure to carry the unit or put it in a cart to move it around. You're not going to want to drag the unit itself because the furrow cutter is going to dig into the ground. You're going to pick it up. Here's how you do that. You grab the middle handle, other hand on the front handle, and then you carry it around like this. It's 6 feet long. It's weighing in at about 29 pounds, so not the heaviest thing in the world, not the lightest thing in the world, doable by one person, easy enough to move around. Why you want to carry it and not drag it around is because you don't want this furrow cutter here, right here, to dig into your pathways, to dig into other things and get caught in the ground. So carry it when you're moving it from plot to plot. There we have it, a finished unit, all done, looking nice and sweet, ready to get out into the field to save you a whole bunch of hours in terms of labor and to save you a whole bunch of wear and tear on your back, not having to bend over, because you can just pull on that handle and go and plant up to 264 seedlings in just a few minutes. Fast, fast, fast. Assembly itself goes pretty quickly. When you get it all out of the box, all the bolts are in place. That saves you a lot of time of having to figure out what goes where. All you need are 2 basic tools, a box wrench, a 13 millimeter and a 10 millimeter, and then a socket with a 10 millimeter and a 13 millimeter socket on it. One person could probably put this together in about 30 minutes. If you watch this video, you can look at that Japanese guide to get a rough picture of what's going on, or you can check out our written instructions, which you can download on the site at paperpot.co. If you had 2 people going at this, it would probably go a little quicker just to help with bolt assembly and holding the unit and steadying the unit while you put it together. Overall though, pretty easy, definitely easier than some pieces of IKEA furniture that I've had to put together in my lifetime. Now that the unit's all built, if you want to learn more about how to use it, how to adjust it, just check out more videos on our site at paperpot.co, where there's a variety of videos showing usage, adjustment to help you use this device and make it even more efficient to save you a lot of time and labor and a lot of wear and tear on your back. Thanks for watching this one on behalf of all of us at paperpot.co.